which is 13 through 24. 13 through 24. Pastor Melody, yes. In Canva, you found it, right? The Wednesday night Joshua file?
Yes.
Because there's lots of, did you see all the slides in there?
Yes, sir.
Hey,
And
lady.
would you like a clicker? Or would you like me to click?
Me? You want me to have the clicker?
If you want to.
Sure. Thanks, man.
Make sure it's pointing to this little guy.
Back there.
He has a clicker.
Okay. Don't get any ideas. I do not click myself. You click it. If we spend all my time with me clicking stuff, we're in trouble. I will never click it. All right. Let's open in prayer before we get going, okay? Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this night. Lord, help us to be faithful to your word. Lord, it's not lightly that we step into Bible study. We know that this is your word to us, and that we grow closer to your heart, and that we discover more about ourselves as your people. And so we want to honor you with this time. Help us to be good students of your word tonight, we pray. Amen. Okay, you guys, so we are in chapter 11 and 12 of Joshua. Where is, you know what? Where is my intern? You guys, Mason the intern is MIA. Okay. There he is. Good. Okay. Mason is here, you guys. Okay. What's that? No. I'm not leading him. I said, yeah. All right. So we got into a little bit of this last week with Mason. Mason got through the chapter 10 material, and then he started turning the corner right into chapter 11. And so we're going to get through this, but now this is kind of happening a little bit quickly here. And you're going to see that as we spend time in chapters 11 and 12, we're going to follow Joshua as he starts going through the conquest. But at the end of 12, then there's a pivot. It's a hinge. And we're now going to see the conquered land is going to be started to be parsed out to the different tribes. But some of that is we need to pay attention to, because not all the enemies are gone as Joshua is doing that. So part of parsing out to the other tribes is going to be saying, okay, this is your land, but there's people living on it that you have to kick off of this land, right? And so that's looking ahead for them. But right now they are still together as one nation, and they're battling as a nation against other nations. And we're going to see some of those coalitions happen where the enemy gets together with several enemy to try and stand up against the Israelites. And we'll see how that goes for them. Ultimately, this land has already been promised to them, right? And so because God has already promised this land to them, essentially they are fighting from a place of victory, not from a place of, well, we hope this goes our way, okay? Saying that, you guys, I was up until about 2 o'clock this morning working on Bible study materials. I have started in Judges chapter 1 as of last night, and we have some, let's get through some maps here. Dun, dun, dun. There's our material for if we hit 13. There's more maps if we want that. You guys, Judges is coming up. I'm about 7 pages in on chapter 1. I've gotten through the introduction, prepping all of that, and now into chapter 1 of Judges. We are saying this, July 1st is going to be that beginning date, which means we have tonight and next week to get through all of Judges, okay? So, or through Joshua. Thank you, Pastor Mel. So we are on it. That being said, you guys notice this. I'm going to call your attention to this table right here. There we go. Okay, if you guys can see that, can you see that over there, Mason? I have a box full of 10 copies of the illuminated Bible journals for Judges. Knowing that we have the study coming up, they're $6 a piece. If you want one, go ahead and just put your name, take one, and then I think just, what are we doing, Dee? We're asking they could put something in the tithe tray, or they can, or just hand it to Deanne if you guys want a copy. But you can do it that way. Just make sure you're signing your name. That way we know they're all accounted for, okay? But Judges is coming up. Thank you, Pastor Melody. You saw that slide there. Yeah, and so we're on it. I'm so excited about Judges because Judges is really the natural connection for us as we get ready for the next story, the continuing story here of Joshua. So let's get right into it. Verse 1 of Joshua chapter 11. When Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of this, he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and to the king of Shimron, and to the king of Aksaph. Man, I have these names phonetically at the very bottom of this document, if you have it. And to the kings who were in the northern hill country and in the Arabah, south of Chinneroth. Chinneroth is the Sea of Galilee, right? Chinneroth, Mason described it to us last week. It literally means harp, because if you look at the shape of the lake or of that sea, it is the shape of a harp. And in the lowland, in Naphoth Dor on the west, and the Canaanites in the east and in the west, the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Jebusites in the hill country, and the Hivites under Hermon in the land of Mizpah. The Hivites, who are Hivites, but they are not a part of this group that is getting together. Do you guys remember? You can be a Hivite, but where is your city? Because we can also refer to you as the city that you're from. What is the name of that group who were technically Hivites who tricked the Israelites into accepting them? Gibeonites, that's right. And because they're Hivites, they still belong to this group, but technically they are from the city of Gibeon. So we refer to them not only as Hivites, but also as Gibeonites, right? Okay, let's keep going. And they came out with all their troops, a great horde, in the number like the sand that is on the seashore, and very many horses and chariots. Okay, horses and chariots. I'm not going to get into it here. I will just briefly touch on it a little bit. Horses. I cleaned this up a little bit from last week. If you're following online, you have more of the cleaned up version that has this kind of title of this little section of what is the place of horses within the Old Testament. Technically, this is the first time within Joshua in all of these conquests that we're hearing of horses. But when we study the Philistines and we learn about the Philistine army, they love the idea of horses and chariots. That's one of their go-to, basically, power plays. We are going to keep you subdued because we have horses and chariots. And so this is the first time we're hearing about it. But think about this, you guys. Horses are one of those things that the Israelites are warned from basically collecting. You are not to amass horses. Right? You are not to amass horses. Where does that come from? That's Deuteronomy 17:16, Psalm 27. What does it say in Psalm 27? Does it really say, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of our Lord God? You guys, that's the reason right there. What would happen if the Israelites started amassing? Because think of all the people that they're conquering, right? All these great nations. They start with the big bad at first. They get rid of Jericho. Then they move on to Ai. We hear of Gibeon, and even Gibeon is a great city. If you were doing this, I'm going to ask somebody who has this kind of mind. I'm going to pick on Zeb Lewis, my Lord of the Rings friend. Zeb, if you were a conquering army and you were going, and we're thinking of the Roman mindset, but even the medieval mindset, as you were conquering people, what would you be doing with those people that you conquered as far as trying to improve a position of strength? Yes. Brought them into the Roman way of life. Yeah. And then you're also taking what they have and you're adding it to your own supply, right? We don't see this happening here. You think that the Israelites would be gathering horses from everywhere they go. But what are they doing right now, which just seems kind of a little bit crazy to us? What are they doing with every place that they conquer? Utterly destroying it. Animals and everything, right? And ultimately, it comes into this, and we see it in Deuteronomy 17:16, which says this, "Only he must not acquire many horses for himself or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again." The idea here is that they are being told, do not amass horses, or I would say this, do not amass a cavalry. A cavalry. Why is God saying, do not build for yourselves a cavalry or a great army of horses? What do you think? Katie, what do you think? I told Katie because she was sitting here, I was going to pick on her. Whenever there was a lull, Katie has to answer, but no. Katie, what do you think? Why is God saying, thus the Psalm 27 verse, right? Chapter 20, verse 7, yeah. Because what happens when you have a great cavalry, you're going to start trusting in what? The strength of your forces. That's right. I won't stand right there. Yeah, and that's exactly it. So think about this, because I don't know of any military strategist who would say, you know what, totally forsake, unless you're doing just all hill fighting, right? I don't know of any military strategist that would say, totally forego having a cavalry. What use are they, right? I know when we were looking at the Revolutionary War, there's this great story. I know because we taught this in homeschool in a Becca curriculum, and you learn about Ethan Allen and the Green Boys. Have you guys ever heard the story of Ethan Allen and the Green Boys? They were a militia, and I believe they were I'm totally just pulling this out of random, but I think they were like Kentucky-based. Probably totally off in that, but they're in this area here. And they made sure they kept all the fighting to the hills, because there's a reason why they called them the Green Boys. It's because they knew the hills, so they would always pick the location of their battle. What makes Joshua so good as a general? What do you guys think? Strategy-wise. Are there some things that you guys can say, oh, he tends to do this thing and that thing? Do you guys remember with Ai? He had this idea. What was the idea that he did with Ai that really just kind of fooled the socks off of him? He baited him, right? And he hid part of his army. He says, you guys go here to this region and this location and hide out there, right? And then when you come out, you'll actually be behind them when you come out. Joshua knew the land that he was fighting in. He knew that land, and he knew where the strategic places to put their forces were. So, because when you have a general who's that mindful of it, what kind of place, knowing that you're going to be going up against horses and chariots, what kind of places do you think Joshua is avoiding to have an all-out battle? What's that battleground he's avoiding? Open plains, right? Anywhere where the horses can get ahead of steam and those charioteers have it wide open and can just have their way, right? He's controlling the battles, and he's taking the battle strategically in places that will favor their numbers. All right, we'll keep going here. One of the things that was just an interesting note, in these modern times, the main battle tank for the Israel army is the Merkava, which literally means chariot. It was first produced in 1979. If you've got the digital notes on you right now, you can see a picture of one of those. Literally translated, a chariot. Verse 5, and all these kings joined their forces and came and encamped together at the waters of Merom to fight against Israel. All right, according to the historian Josephus, there's about 300,000 soldiers. Why would you do that, Drew? 300,000 soldiers, 10,000 cavalry, and 20,000 chariots. Merom is in the Hula Valley, which is in the plain of Isdraelon. Okay, if you guys see that map there, do you see one of the red circles that is the highest one? It's actually outlined. I outlined it in yellow, which I didn't realize when it looked great at this contrast here. Do you see that flat kind of, you can see topographically there's a mountainous area there, right? Do you guys see that? That plain area, that one that doesn't have a lot of topographical information, which means it's flat, those are the plains of Isdraelon, okay? And that's what we're talking about. That's where they want this battle to happen. Let's have it on the open plains so we can make use of our horses and our chariots. Now, overlooking this, and we talked about this last week, is this place called Tel Megiddo, right? And the word tel, T-E-L, means this. It means a hill. And it's more than just a hill or more than just a mound. It is a mound of a city that has been built over and built over and built over and built over, which means this. If you have a city that's continually being built over, what is probably happening to that city time after time? What was that, Brian? It's getting destroyed, right? There's something bad is happening there. There's some sort of fight for that city, right? It gets razed, and R-A-Z-E-D, it gets totally destroyed to the ground. And so the new people coming in have to build up something over it. You are seeing a hill that has naturally occurred because what is happening is people are constantly destroying that fortress and that city and building up on top of it again. And so what you have here is at this time, to this day right now, Megiddo looks like this. It is a World Heritage Site. We got to go to a World Heritage Site nearly 2 years ago when we went to Machu Picchu. Me, Charlotte, and the kids. We took them at a World Heritage Site. It means this site is so valuable that there's all these rules you cannot even, they really don't even want you touching the stones there because your skin oils. They're worried about anything you bring with you. You can't bring bug spray because they're afraid if you use aerosols within this World Heritage Site that somehow you could cause to its degradation. Megiddo at this time is a World Heritage Site because literally, archaeologically, it is city upon city of conquered city, and then the new one has been built over it and over it. And so this is when we talk about Megiddo, and remember I said we know this word, but we know this word is Har Megiddo, which means the same thing as Tel Megiddo. It's just using a different Aramaic language there. But we know it as Har Megiddo is Armageddon, okay? Armageddon. And so if you look topographically, what's happening here is you have Megiddo is basically this vantage point in which you see battle after battle happening on these plains, okay? And this is where this coalition against Joshua is wanting to happen. They want to take them to these plains so they can get going at them with their horses and chariots. We're going to get to this in the book of Judges. This is where the general Barak, you guys remember, or do you guys know about the judge who was not a man, it was a woman, and her name was Deborah. Do you guys know about Deborah? Do you see the lady holding the sword there? So that's Deborah. That's one of the judges that we get in the book of Judges. And she is such this outlier. She's an outlier because, one, a woman should never be in the place in these times. Think about this kind of civilization. This is a patriarchal time in history where if you think about it from a history standpoint, how long have women been viewed as equal to man historically? Is it a short time or is it a long time? Short. It's very short. We think even within our nation, equal rights, right? This was really, for us as a nation, transforming in the 60s. Okay? And so what happens is Deborah, she becomes this leader of the Israelites by default because no men are stepping up. And she goes to this general, Barak, to have him stand against God's enemies. And he wins a great victory. This is the site that he does it, is here on the plains in front of Megiddo. This is where Gideon, he has great victory over the Midianites, the same place. This is where Saul and Jonathan die in battle. And then later in, I want to say 2 Kings, is that right? We get, and it's not Amaziah, it's Ahaziah. That should get fixed if you're following in the digital notes. That is misspelled. And the death of Josiah, also in 2 Kings as well. This all happens in this spot. This place, topographically, that we're talking about here, this plain that Megiddo overlooks, is historically a site of epic battles. And what does the book of Revelation tell us about this site? That this is going to be the last battle right here, right? Because guess who's going to bring an army to this site in the end times? Who do you think, Bill? Revelation. What are the two forces that are going to be going at it here? This is going to be Satan going against Jesus, right? This is going to be the end times. This is Armageddon is happening here. Okay, let's keep moving. So this is the battle. This is where they're amassing against Joshua here. Let's keep going. Joshua, and we're in verse 6 now, chapter 11. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will give over all of them, slain, to Israel, and you shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." I love the King James. The King James, "and you shall hew their horses." And that word, they struggle with it in translating that in the Hebrew. What exactly is this word? They don't know, but the best English word we can say is you're going to do something to these horses to make them ineffective. And so the best word we could come up with in our modern translations is hamstring. You're going to do something so they cannot mobilize as horses. Joshua, he shows his skills because he knows how to act with speed. His timing is just immaculate in his battle plans. He has a gift for stealth, for coming in and moving this huge Israelite army and moving it in such a way that the enemy isn't anticipating what they're doing. And then he has ultimately this knowledge of the terrain. You guys, when we early on meet Joshua, he has a partner with him, right? Who is his partner? Caleb. That's right. What is their job, Kim? Caleb and Joshua, and then 10 other guys, they're supposed to go do something. What are they supposed to do?
Look out the land and be spies and come back and give a good report.
Spy out the land. Yeah. I wonder if Joshua and Caleb were really good at taking notes, right? How well did these guys really know this land? Because right now, Joshua is acting in a way that he knows this terrain pretty well. For somebody who's just done this trans-Jordan crossing over, right, and coming into this promised land, he seems to know this land pretty well. It's because he's already spied it out. He's got it in his head. He is a smart, smart guy. All right, let's keep going. Verse 7, so Joshua and all his warriors came up against them suddenly by the waters of Merom and fell upon them. And the Lord gave them into the hand of Israel, who struck them and chased them as far as Great Sidon and Misrephoth Maim, and eastward as far as the valley of Mizpah. And they struck them until he left none remaining. Remember what Josephus said about this army. At least 300,000 people were in this coalition going after them. They were looking to take advantage of being on these plains and having their horses and chariots have a field day against these footmen of the Israelites, right? We aren't given all of the details here. It says this in verse 9, and Joshua did to them just as the Lord said to him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. And Joshua turned back at that time and captured Hazor and struck its king with the sword, for Hazor formerly was the head of all of those kingdoms. And they struck with the sword all who were in it, devoting them to destruction. There was none left that breathed, and he burned Hazor with fire. And all of the cities of those kings and all their kings Joshua captured and struck them with the edge of the sword, devoting them to destruction, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. But none of the cities that stood on mounds did Israel burn, except Hazor alone. That Joshua burned. And all the spoils of these cities and the livestock the people of Israel took for their plunder. But every person they struck with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them, and they did not leave any who breathed. No prisoners here. Okay, let's just stop there for a second. Is there anything that's standing out to you? Any questions you may have, or anything that you're noting just kind of mentally in this description at all? Anything standing out? Okay, you guys know I'll have to call on Katie, right? If you guys don't say anything. No. Tracy, what do you think? Tracy, I know you Gold Star student. You've read this material. Is there anything that stands out to you in this battle against this coalition?
What I read was the other cities, when they would take them over, they would usually like capitalize on it, maybe like areas for commerce and stuff. Houston was a capital, so it symbolized wickedness. So we had to
Yeah, yeah. Because ultimately, what is Joshua going to do with these fortresses that remain? He's going to install his own people, right? Strategically, he's going to put the tribes there and have them take them over. But for some reason, Hazor, right? And the only kind of clue that we have a little bit here directly in this text is it was because Hazor was viewed as being the head of all of these other kingdoms, that this was the leader. And so there's almost something there that an example needed to be made of its destruction, right? It's interesting. I think of God, and this is just me just thinking off the top of my head. I think back to the story of the flood, right? The destruction of all of man's wickedness. And God gets rid of it by flood. And what does he say after the flood? Never again will I what? Destroy the earth with water, right? It's interesting because now I think if you look at it almost symbolically, Joshua, and not that Joshua, I mean, does Joshua have command of the weather? You would have to wonder after we saw the battle at Gibeon, right? Where the sun stops, he holds it in the sky. He asks the Lord to stop it. Could Joshua have called upon a flame or a torrent to come, right? But he doesn't choose that. He chooses fire here to totally wipe it off. Its presence does not need to remain so that his people inhabit it, so that somebody wants to come back and reclaim it. Just totally get rid of it. Okay, now the other thing, for all of the buildup of these horses and chariots, by the opposing side. What is the story with that? What do you guys think? What did Joshua do? What did the Israelites do here? What are some of the things they could have done, do you think? What's that? Yeah, he could have saved some. Okay, Jess, what do we think? What is something that the Israel, because it says they hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots. What do you think for that phrase, hamstrung the horses and burned the chariots? It almost wonders. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, if it's so easy, why didn't everybody else do that, right? Well, you just hamstring the horses, and then burn the chariots. That's how you beat cavalry and chariots, right? One of the thoughts is that potentially they waited for a time where this army was bringing the horses down to get watered. And that's when Joshua and the Israelites timed their attack, so that these horses would not be attached to chariots at this time. That's one possible thought of what some Bible commentaries, some theologians think. That's what hamstringing them is they were busy getting water. They were being handled, not ridden, not attached. And that's when the Israelite forces came in, right? What good are your chariots if you're not using them? And if you think about that, if they're burning their chariots, well, are they setting a whole field on fire and making them drive their chariots through it? No, it's probably because the chariots weren't being used, right? That's how they got burnt, potentially. Okay, let's move on. Where were we, you guys? 15? Okay. Let's see, I want to say this. Hazor's destruction targeted specifically because its unique status as the political and military head of the Northern Coalition. The other captured cities were occupied and resettled by Israel. Hazor alone was leveled. I put in here, does this have any lifestyle or personal application to us as followers of Christ? Is there any life application that you could make out of this? What would be a Hazor? Maybe we don't answer that question right now, but maybe it's something that just sticks with you, okay? Maybe you can kind of just think about it. Why? And then in my life, what would Hazor represent? And what is that thing that God would ask me to completely give to destruction, right? It's my job. I got to burn it down. No. All right. You guys, that's me joking and you guys not laughing. Here we go. Verse 15. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. Just as was commanded. Just as Moses told him to do. Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. What was Joshua's greatest military advantage? His greatest skill was what? What's that? Knowing the land? No, we just read it right here, Bob. What was it? Knowing God. Knowing God, right? I'm going to do whatever the Lord tells me to do, no matter if it sounds crazy, right? If it sounds like it's a disadvantage, if we were to conduct ourselves this way, Joshua didn't question it. He said, that's what we're going to do. Okay, verse 16. So Joshua took all the land, and this is the summary of the conquest here. He took all of the land, the hill country and all the Negev, and all the land of Goshen, and the lowland and the Arabah, and the hill country of Israel, and its lowland from Mount Halak, which rises toward Seir, as far as Baal Gad, in the valley of Lebanon below Mount Hermon. And he captured all their kings and struck them and put them to death. Joshua made war a long time with all those kings. We know this because of the age of Caleb, when it comes time for the land to be allotted, that this campaign lasted a total of 7 years. Let's continue going. There was not a city that made peace with the people of Israel except for the Hivites, the inhabitants of Gibeon. They took them all in battle, for it was the Lord's doing to harden their hearts that they should come against Israel in battle, in order that they should be devoted to destruction and should receive no mercy but be destroyed, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And Joshua came out of that time and cut off, here we go, Bill, are you listening here? And Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from all the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua devoted them to destruction with their cities. Bill, who has Joshua just committed himself to go up against? The Anakim. Who are they? You guys, let's help Bill out here. What's that? These are the giants, right? These are people from the lineage of Anak. These are giants. And are they just in one area? No. How many areas did we list here? From the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, from the hill country of Judah, and from the hill country of Israel. That's at least 6 locations that Joshua is committing himself to. Get rid of the presence of these giants. Okay. The Anakim, anything in Hebrew that ends in I am, that I am in that translation means it's plural, okay? Verse 22, there were none of the Anakim left in the land of the people of Israel, only in Gaza, in Gath, and in Ashdod, for some remain. Okay? Gaza, Gath, Ashdod were 3 of the 5 capital cities of the Philistines. So we'll just keep going here. The Philistines, Goliath. So just reminding you guys, 1 Samuel 17, Goliath, a Philistine soldier, stood 9 feet 6 inches, according to some translations. There's a discrepancy between translations. In the biblical text, it said David picked up 5 stones when he went to battle against Goliath. Why did he take 5 stones? D. Because altogether there were five of them. Goliath and his 4 brothers, right? And we have the name of some of his brothers, of 2 of them, Ishbi-Benob and Saph. And then there's at least 2 others, and we know that out of 2 Samuel. David was preparing to battle how many giants? 5 giants, not just Goliath. Goliath was just the first, right? Okay, let's keep going. Verse 23, so Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moses, and Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to their tribal allotments, and the land had rest from war. There we go. That's probably one of our first hinges right there, and the land had rest from war. Let's get into chapter 12. Verse 1, now these are the kings of the land whom the people of Israel defeated and took possession of their land beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise. Toward the sunrise means the east, from the valley of Arnon to Mount Hermon, and with all the Arabah to the east. Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon and ruled over Aror, which is on the edge of the valley of the Arnon, and from the middle of the valley as far as the river Jabbok, and the boundary of the Ammonites, that is, half of Gilead. Verses 3 through 4. And the Arabah to the Sea of Chinneroth, that's the Sea of Galilee, eastward, and in direction of Beth Jeshimoth, and to the Sea of the Arabah and the Salt Sea, southward to the foot of the slope of, and I would say you pronounce this Pisgah, but in West Virginia, we would call this Pisky. Am I saying it right? Okay. And Og, king of Bashan, one of the remnant of the Rephaim. The Rephaim, again, is another group of giants, and Og is one of them, who lived at Ashtaroth and at Edrei, and ruled over Mount Hermon and Salakah, and all Bashan to the boundary of the Gerishites and to the Maacathites, and over half of Gilead to the boundary of Sihon, king of the Heshbon. Moses, the servant of the Lord, and the people of Israel defeated them. So these are some kind of, we're getting a recap of all the conquered people. Some of these people have been conquered in Moses' time, not just Joshua's time as being commander. And Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave their land as a possession to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh. So, in relation, this land that just was recounted, where does it lie in relation to the Jordan? East or west? East or west of the Jordan? This went to the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh. The east. The east. That's right, Mark. Yeah. Yep. All right. Here we go. This is verses 7 through 24. And these are the kings of the land whom Joshua and the people of Israel defeated on the west side of the Jordan, from Baal-Gad in the valley of Lebanon to Mount Halak that rises toward Seir. And Joshua gave their land to the tribes of Israel as a possession according to their allotments, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the Arabah, in the slopes, in the wilderness, and in the Negev, the land of the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and the Jebusites. And then we get this list of all of the kings. Do you guys see that there? Okay. Who wants to read that list of all the kings? I did you a favor there, and I put the phonetic pronunciations next to them. Do you guys see that? Do you guys have that on the paper copy? Okay. All right. So, if we had to, you guys could do it. All right. And there's the list of them there. Let's keep going. All Kings 31 is referring to 2 east of the Jordan and 30 on the west. Well, that would be 32. This is 31. 30 and 1. Okay, there we go. Yeah. 30 and 1 is this. It's the geometrical value of the name El, E-L, or the name of God. Right? It's just kind of a fun fact a little bit. When you hear a number, what does it mean? Well, it's the Hebrew numerical. If you would say in English, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, right? In the Hebrew alphabet, to spell El, God, out of Hebrew letters, you take the first letter and you take the 30th letter, and it adds to 31. It's the grammatical number of the name of God. That's just kind of a side note. If you're reading the digital notes, I just put a little addition in there. You guys, I've told you, here's the thing. If I don't finish teaching a portion that we had set aside, right? We're supposed to get through 2 chapters in one session, and say we only get through 1 chapter. And so now I have this prepared material for next week. Here's what's going to happen, and I can guarantee you, because it happens every time. If you have me look over Bible information and commentaries, guess what I'm going to do to the old information? I'm going to change it. I'm going to add to it. I'm not going to subtract to it for the most part. I'm just going to keep adding and adding, right? And so that's what I did here. If you have access to the digital notes, if you're interested in how this, some of the numerology and how that plays out, it's always one of those things that we should treat as this. It's a fun insight to kind of think about. It leans mystical whenever you do study in the Bible, and there's room for that. We know that it's rabbinical tradition that you would study the mysteries. What are the mysteries? What are the mystical things, the supernatural elements that we could be missing unless we pause and we really reflect on something for some time? It is not to be treated as if this is like firm in the sand and everybody agrees on it, okay? Most of your mainline commentaries will not spend time talking a lot about symbology, numerology, or even word studies and how they affect how we interpret a passage. That being said, it's important that we do commit some of our time to do that because there are true insights. I don't think you could read the book of John and get half of what John is trying to tell us unless you're leaning that way, okay? So that's just one of them. I threw that in there, but then I put this caveat of you take that with a grain of salt. All right, I did do this. I'm not going to throw Deanne under the bus and ask her about a map. Did you get a map at all, Dee? Okay. What's that? You saw it right there? Okay. All right, let's keep going here. We are now in Joshua 13. How many of you guys need Joshua 13 packets? If you got them, we're in them right now. I've got more. Is there anybody, just with a show of hands, anybody who wants a Joshua 13 packet who may not have one? Yeah, Zeb? Okay. And Loretta? All right. Yes, ma'am? Okay, oh yeah, thank you. And you guys have the QR codes on your desks as well, or on your tables that have 13 through 24. So here was, this was fun because what I did last Saturday is I basically went through, because a lot of commentaries want to handle this just in chunks of information and not really having you read a lot. Because if you guys were really kind of excited about that last portion that we read in Joshua chapter 12, it's more of that, right? Where it's basically just names and lists of kings, rulers, and regions. And so sometimes it can feel a little bit dry. This is one of those moments when you're questioning, do I really want to read through the Bible in a year, right? When I know I'm going to spend the next 2 days reading lists like this. And I think sometimes we err on the side of like it doesn't feel like we're being blessed, you know, when you have a list to read. But there's good information in there. And so what I did is I just highlighted like crazy in my journal. I have one of these for Joshua, and I just went through all of the remaining portions, and I was looking for those highlights that are really good for us to get out. And so now this document is basically just that with a little bit of breaking up the sections with information, okay? So now we're looking at Joshua giving out the allotments. He's dividing the land and handing it out to the tribes. And this is happening from now through all the way through chapter 24. He's still operating out of Gilgal. This is his center of location, but it's going to change. We're going to see in Joshua chapter 18. Now, Gilgal was the area. Why did they settle upon Gilgal when they first started this conquest? Do you guys remember? Have an idea? Even if it doesn't seem like a good idea? Do we know? No? What was that, Pastor Mel? God said to do it? Well, it was the city or the camp right where they crossed the Jordan, right? Yeah. Yeah, and they set up the stones there. Okay, this is that site. So it's kind of like by default, this has been their base of operations. We know it's what? I think it's about 7 miles away from Jericho. And so this is where Joshua's at right now. It's still his command center, but it's never really meant to be like the main site. And so we see in Joshua chapter 18, he's going to move this from Gilgal, and it's going to go to a place that's probably more familiar to us. That's called Shiloh, okay? And so his command is going to move there, and he's going to do the rest of the allotments from that location. But first of all, we see that there are 2.5 tribes that are east of the Jordan. They came over, they crossed over. We call that, it was like the Trans-Jordan. They crossed over the Jordan. But now, really where they want to be, the choice that they picked was this land that was on the other side, that was east of the Jordan. Is this the promised land? Not really, right? Not really. Now, technically, when we talk about that portion that has been promised, it talks about two banks of bodies of water, two shores from this shore to this shore. What are those two shores? And God says that's the promised land. But we don't see it that way. Usually we think of the land of Canaan as the promised land for the Israelites. But what are those two shores? From the bank of what? Of what? Of the Jordan? No, not the Jordan. Not the Jordan. Jordan was kind of bisecting it a little bit. What's the big body of water to the west of them? Mediterranean. Yep. So from the bank of the Mediterranean all the way east to the bank of what river? Not the Jordan. Euphrates. Yeah. So technically from the Euphrates to the Mediterranean, that was all promised to them. But for some reason, we keep settling on Canaan as being really the hub of where they're supposed to settle. But Reuben, Gad, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, they settle on this land that is east of everybody else. They're cut off by the river. And they settled on it because they wanted it. They thought it would be good for cattle. They weren't thinking that this was the promised area for them. When they talked the promised land, they really did decide it was Canaan is where they needed to go and conquer. But these 2.5 tribes, they're taking only half of Manasseh with them. They decided, I know this has been promised to us, but this looks good for cows. That's an interesting choice for us because basically what they're saying is, I know God promised us this thing, but what if we took this other thing instead, right? What do you think is going to happen to these 2.5 tribes over time? Are they going to prosper? No. We see what happens is they're vulnerable, and they are some of the first tribes to start intermixing with the foreign tribes that are still in the borderlands because they're basically in a buffer area right now. And so they're going to take all of the impact of that foreign influence coming over. This area now for us is known, if you were to take a tour of Israel and go visit there, this would be known as the Golan Heights. And the Golan Heights is still a very tempestuous area where there's a lot of conflict, a lot of war happening here is in this area, exactly where they're choosing to settle. All right, let's get into 13 really quick here. If you guys got that in front of you, you're going to see we are not reading everything 13 through 24, okay? Because like I said, what we would be doing is we would just be reading list after list of places. So we're going to hit some of the highlights. Okay. Now Joshua was old and advanced in years, and the Lord said to him, "You are old and advanced in years." I love it when the Bible does that. Right? Now Joshua was an old man, and the Lord said to him, "You're an old man." Right? That's poetic right there. That's good writing. "And there remains yet very much land to possess." This is the land that yet remains. All the regions of the Philistines and all those of the Geshurites from the Sihor, which is east of Egypt, northward to the boundary of Ekron, it is counted as Canaanite. And there are 5 rulers of the Philistines, those of Gaza, Ashdod, Askelon, Gath, and Ekron, and those of the Evaim. In the south, all of the land of the Canaanites and the Mirah that belonged to the Sidonians, to Aphek, and to the boundaries of the Amorites, and the land of the Gebalites, and all Lebanon, toward the sunrise, that is to the east, from Baal Gad below Mount Hermon to Lebo Hamath, and all the inhabitants of the hill country from Lebanon to Mishperoth Maim, even all the Sidonians. I myself will drive them out. Who is saying I will drive them out? God is. Okay. From before the people of Israel, only allot the land to Israel for an inheritance, as I have commanded you. Now therefore divide this land for an inheritance to the 9 tribes and half of the tribe of Manasseh. Okay, can somebody sum up for me what is happening there in this statement? What's happening in 13, these first 7 verses? More work to do, right? But a new phase is happening now, is Joshua leading the army, the total army, to go after these remaining forces. God is saying, I will do it, right? But he wants Joshua to do what? Just hand out the allotments to the tribes, right? Divvy up the land now. This is the time to do that. So, who is supposed to take care of the issue of these people being I say foreigners, the people who don't belong in the land? Now, whose responsibility is it to expel them? Not Joshua's anymore, right? Ultimately, God says, yeah. But think about it. If Joshua is now allotting the land, he's dividing it up, what happens if Zeb is the perfect one to pick on, because literally one of the tribes is Zebulun, right? So he goes to Zeb and he says, Zeb, this is your allotment. There's giants in this land, okay? Have a great time. But that's ultimately what's happening here, right? So whose responsibility now, with the provision of God, whose responsibility is it now to get rid of these enemies? The tribes, the individual tribes. They are no longer behaving as one national force, okay? They have now gone tribalistic on this in their approach. Why are they going that way? What was the one thing that it said, this is why we're doing it this way now? What's that? They're in it for the cows? No, that was the 2.5 tribes. They went to... It's okay. No, it's okay. What was the one thing? Think about it. We talked about how poetic this book was, or this chapter was. Joshua was getting old. You're old, Josh. It's almost as if God was saying, Joshua, you're getting a little old to be doing this, right? To be leading armies. So we're going to have to do a new approach. That's what we read. That's literally how it started here. What changed? Well, Joshua is getting old, right? Okay. The 5 Philistine cities today. The old Pentapolis split in 2 ways. This is a side note here. 3 coastal cities that have never gone away. They're still there, and they still carry their ancient biblical names even to this day. You know them as Gaza, Ashkelon, and Ashdod. Gaza, of course, is still this Hamas, worn-torn land, right? It's still a very, not controversial, but worn-torn, right? It's still in conflict, even to this day. And then because of their proximity, Ashkelon and Ashdod are still part of that war as well. They're still being brought into conflict daily between who? The Israelites and the foreigners, right? Are those, we would call them Hamas now. Did the tribes do their job? No. This is a failure, right? That conflict still remains to this day. The Israelites are still at war for these regions. Think about that, you guys. Still at war for these regions right now. The 2 out of those 5 main Philistine cities, Gath and Ekron, they are no longer around. And the funny thing is because some of the Lord's prophets prophesied against their doom. We see that in Amos chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. When a prophet of the Lord speaks on the Lord's behalf, it's going to come to pass. And those two cities don't exist anymore. Let's keep going. I've got verses, we're going to hit 13 through 14 and then 22. In 22, we're going to pause, where it's just kind of recounting just a weird story. Yet the people of Israel did not drive out the Geshurites or the Maacathites, but Geshur and Maach dwell in the midst of Israel to this day. To the tribe of Levi alone, Moses gave no inheritance. The offerings by fire to the Lord, God of Israel, are their inheritance, as he said to them. They're given no land, but what we're going to see is they actually get tithed cities. Cities are given to the Levites, but they're almost a tithe that are coming from the existing tribes. The tribes themselves are going to say, we will commit this city to go to the Levites. Verse 22 in chapter 13. Balaam, also son of Beor, the one who practiced divination, was killed with the sword by the people of Israel among the rest of their slain. This is a weird story here. We're going to get into it because the influence and the presence of this weird prophet is going to have a lasting effect, and we're going to see that something that he did is going to come back into the Israelites' activity. We'll just say it. That's a bad way of saying it. The Israelites are going to have to face the ramifications of this prophet, even moving on here in the book of Joshua. Balaam is one of Scripture's strangest figures. He's a Gentile prophet from Mesopotamia whose oracles, this means his pronouncements, were genuine pronouncements. So he's a non-Israelite prophet who, when he speaks, he's actually speaking truth, who foresees the star out of Jacob, a line that the church later reads as towards Bethlehem. Balak, king of Moab, hired him to curse Israel, but every oracle that came out of his mouth that was meant to be a curse instead landed as a blessing to the Israelites. So when Balaam found that he had failed in actually cursing the Israelites, he did this instead. He coached Balak to corrupt Israel from within by luring the men into relationships with the Moabite and Midianite women. This is accounted for in the book of Numbers 31:16. They call this the sin at Peor. All right? The sin at Peor. Let's move out of that and let's get back into Joshua. Really quickly again, I'm just going to do a quick little quiz with you guys. What was the sin at Peor? Israelite men were doing what? They were mixing with foreign women, Moabite and Midianite women, right? And they call this the sin at Peor. And this was Balaam's idea. This was this Gentile prophet's idea. If we can't take Israel down by me calling curses upon them, how can we take them out? I know. Let's have them intermarry with these foreign women and see what happens to them, okay? The sin at Peor is what they call that. Joshua 13, verse 33. But to the tribe of Levi, Moses gave no inheritance. The Lord God of Israel is their inheritance, just as he said to them. We're going to keep going here. They ultimately are given 48 cities that are essentially tithed to them. Now, here's one of the things that we get. There's an interesting story. If you go all the way back to Genesis 49, there is an interesting story here. Think about this. Genesis 49 takes place in Egypt. And in Egypt, the second in command of all Egypt is Jacob's son, Joseph. Joseph has just seen all of this kingdom, the Egyptians, he's gotten them through a famine. And a family that once betrayed him by selling him into slavery and convincing their father that he had been killed now comes on his doorstep. And Joseph, instead of condemning his brothers for what they did, acknowledges that they had a role to play in ultimately fulfilling God's plan for his life, which was to bring him to Egypt for that time, to be in the role that he was. And so he brings his family back into the fold again, right? He brings them back and he gives them this land. He sets them out in the Goshen area so they can raise cattle. And ultimately the brothers bring their father Jacob and the whole family is reunited. Now, Joseph has two sons that are born to him by an Egyptian woman, and his two sons are what names? Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim and Manasseh. And in here, we get this weird story because now Jacob is getting old. The Bible is full of people getting old, okay? So you guys feel good. God has a plan for us. And so Jacob goes to give his blessing. He calls all of his sons together. How many sons? How many tribes? 12. But then Joseph, think of his role. He's one of the 12, but he actually is considered as having two tribes in him because his father wants Joseph's two sons to be brought out and mixed into this group. So instead of Joseph receiving this individual single blessing from his father, Jacob says, give me your two sons in your place. I'm going to bless them. Is that a bigger blessing or a lesser blessing for Joseph? It's a bigger blessing. Thank you, Pastor Melody. It's a bigger blessing. But there's two sons that during this time of blessing, Genesis chapter 49, that Jacob says, you are not receiving a blessing. Instead of receiving something, you are going to be scattered. And one of them is Levi. One of them is Levi. You're going to be scattered among the other tribes, he tells them. He brings them all together. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it's fierce, and for their wrath, for it is cruel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you, right? So now the firstborn is kind of moving on to Judah. We're seeing that out of here. Reuben gets skipped over as well. Why does Reuben get skipped over even though he's the firstborn? We are in Egypt. Jacob is blessing all of his sons, which we know by their tribe names, but these are the names of the sons themselves, the 12 tribes. Reuben gets skipped because what did Reuben do? Reuben slept with Jacob's handmaids. Okay? If you remember the story, Jacob had two wives. What are those wives' names? Rachel and Leah. Rachel and Leah. Who did Jacob really want to be married to? Which of those wives? Rachel. And Leah had what? She had weak eyes. She wasn't good to look at, right? Poor Leah. And so the bulk of these boys come out of those. But when those women, and so if we know that story, who gives sons right away? Leah, right? Jacob's really in love with Rachel, but she's not the one giving him a bunch of sons. And so what happens now is each one of these women have handmaids, okay, personal servants. And so what do the women start doing? As they start not producing heirs or boys for Jacob, the women instead tell Jacob to do what? Take the handmaids and have children by them, right? Okay. So, out of the 12 boys, some of them there's a lot of them that are from Leah. There's 2 that come from Rachel. Who are the 2? Because these are special kids. Joseph and Benjamin, right? Benjamin's the baby. Joseph is the one that the brothers all hate and they want to plot to kill him. Instead, they just sell him into slavery, right? These are Jacob's 2 top, his favorite sons. We're not supposed to have favorite kids, but you and I all know that we have favorite kids, right, Dee? I hear you talking to... Okay. I like you better than I like the other one. All right. What Reuben did is Reuben slept, as the oldest son, he slept with the handmaids, or one of the handmaids. All right? And Jacob found out about it, and he said, "You're not getting any inheritance from me, buddy. You assumed a place that wasn't your place, your father's bed." Right? So they're in Egypt. This blessing is coming down. 2 of these brothers are all of a sudden not getting a blessing. In fact, they're being told they're going to be scattered among their brothers. He comes to Joseph, and Joseph has this because this is his firstborn of his sweetheart, his love, right? Rachel. This was the first son born of Rachel, Joseph. He was heartbroken when he thought that Joseph had died. He's elated when he finds out he's alive. That elation carries into, I don't want to just give you my blessing. I want your 2 sons to have my blessing. That way it's a double blessing for you. Joseph brings the 2 sons, and he knows, okay, this is Hebrew society here. This is a father's blessing. You have the right hand of strength, and then you have the other hand. And so he sets up his 2 sons, right? What are their names again? Manasseh and Ephraim. And if you read it here, you can read that Joseph is positioning these 2 boys to line up so that the firstborn is lining up on his father's right hand. So for Joseph, it would be on his left. The Bible goes to lengths to let us know that Joseph is carefully setting them up. Firstborn goes on this side, so when dad goes to bless him, his right hand can come on down. And the other son goes on the other hand, right? Where are we at here? Do you guys see it? Joseph is full. There we go. Where are we at, you guys, where it says? Page 7? Thank you, Shar. It's verse, because this is, we're in 49, Genesis 49, right? Is it in there? Yeah? Okay, Ephraim and Manasseh. Here we go. Thank you, you guys. Okay. So, when Jacob goes to bless these 2, the firstborn, I wanted to make sure I got this right. Ephraim is the firstborn. So Ephraim is going to be right here, right? Joseph has him on his left side. He's pushing him towards his dad. That way, when dad goes to bless him, he puts his right hand, his hand of blessing and strength, on the firstborn. What do you think Jacob does when he goes to bless those 2 boys? He crosses his hands. What does Joseph say? Hey, Dad. He whistles at him, right? Woohoo! Dad, look at your hands. Buddy. And what does his dad say? No, this is the way they're getting blessed. My hand of strength, the firstborn blessing, is going to go to the secondborn, right? And instead it goes on Manasseh. Is that right? Did I get it right? Okay. Weird stories. Think about this, though, because time and again, isn't the Bible kind of full of stories of the second-born son kind of getting a comeuppance on the firstborn son, right? Think of Jacob's story himself, Jacob and Esau. His own brother was the firstborn, but did he receive the firstborn's blessing? No, it went to the second son, Jacob. Oh, Jacob. When they call Jacob a trickster, because that's what his name essentially means, one who strives with God. Basically, you're trying to get one up on God. It's interesting that he uses the same technique and he blesses the secondborn. That's how he received his blessing. These two tribes, when we talk about Ephraim and Manasseh, that's what we're talking about here. Levites, if you guys remember from this moment here in Genesis 49, when Jacob declares that Levi will be scattered among his brothers, what happens to the tribe of Levites for their inheritance? Do they get an allotment of land? No, they don't. What happens to them? What is their blessing, or what is their actual reward? Their provision comes from God, right? But then what do their brothers have to do for them, the other tribes? They have to tithe them cities. So what's happening to the Levites? Are they getting one land or are they being scattered? They're being scattered. You guys, this is to me, this is interesting information here because you're seeing stuff that was prophesied before, that was told to us by totally a different writer in a different era, is now playing out in real time for us as we're catching up historically with this nation. And we're seeing things that were done years before now coming to fruition, and people are having to kind of pay the piper. All right, let's keep going here. I believe, are we on 14, 5 through 15? Oh, you guys, we are at time. Thank you. Okay. Whew. I told you guys, I could, anyways, did I tell you guys I was up until 2 a.m. doing Bible study and Bible prep? And I was still good to go. If Charlotte wasn't like, buddy, you need to go to bed. All right, I'm going to mark this right now. We are leaving off, I'm going to put a highlight on Joshua 14, okay? That's where we're at. We're in a good spot. Hey, you guys, we lost the intern, didn't we? You guys got to keep an eye on him. Okay, he gets lost. Dee, if you can, we need to put a tracker on him. Okay. All right, you guys, boy, oh boy, I left no time for questions. I'm here if you guys want to talk any of this stuff. We really do need to close in prayer and dismiss, okay? All right? Let's do this. Pastor Melody, can I give you the mic so that we pick you up? And will you close us in prayer? Thank you, ma'am.
Father, we thank you for your word that's so rich. It's just amazing that you would impart these things to us. Lord, as we read this next week and just really take to heart what you've entrusted to us, I pray that you would continue to help us to be diligent to know your word. I thank you for these insights and just speaking to us in different ways. So be with us as we go from this place and help us to walk with you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. You guys, thank you. Next week, we are closing out Joshua, okay? So buckle up. We've got lots of chapters to get through. It's fun and it's interesting, though. It'll be good.